steps are cool at dawn. Olive leaves still hold the night. Smoke is curling slow and thin. Names I whisper to the light. Sing, oh, sing to the stones and sky. Let the old words rise. Let the old words rise.
So friends, welcome back to another video. We are heading into part 4 of the brothers Gracchi. Last episode was pretty wild. We got to see the end of Tiberius and how easy it actually was to kill a politician, especially a popular one. And they mentioned that the death of Tiberius would kind of set the stage for the future of the Roman Republic. Obviously, I know that the Republic doesn't have a long time. It has about 100 years, 120, 30 years. But then it's gonna become an empire. So, yeah, pretty curious to see how that happens. But I will know that this apparently set the stage for violence, and there's somebody else on their way, and that is Gaius, who is Tiberius' younger brother. Let's see what he's going to do.
Tiberius Gracchus, reformer and demagogue, died in 133, not by assassination, but by open mob violence. With his death, the Senate thought to return Rome to its traditional order. They passed some of his reforms and tried to placate the people. But rule of the mob is a specter not so easily quelled, and Cornelia, mother of Tiberius, that famous Roman matron, had another son.
Yeah, you're not just going to try to let out the fire after you just slaughter somebody in the street like that.
Gaius had grown up in the shadow of his brother. He was just a boy when their father died, so he always looked up to the brother 10 years his elder. In many ways, they were the same. They were both bold and brave, they were both eloquent and could move a crowd, and they were both desirous of reform. But where Tiberius had been staid and sober, Gaius was histrionic and emotional. Where Tiberius would move the people with his calm words and somber voice, Gaius would rend his toga and shout. He would rain insults down on his enemies and seem almost possessed by fervor. He even had a specially trained slave who would sit behind him during speeches with a lyre, and whenever he was getting too high-pitched or whenever his voice was cracking because he'd whipped himself up into such a frenzy, the slave would pluck a note to remind him to bring it back down.
Okay, that's pretty interesting that those two brothers are that different, and it's not gonna be good because I feel like he might introduce a bit more violence, and people are probably gonna be pretty pissed of what happened to Tiberius. So this is going to be interesting.
To that tone. But when his brother died, Gaius was still young. At first, he tried to withdraw from public life, disappearing from the public eye to focus instead on honing his powers of oratory. But then, one of his friends was forced to stand trial, and Gaius stood to defend him. He whipped up the crowd to such a pitch that the court almost erupted in demonstration for his friend. And when he saw this power, he began to get ideas, and the senators began to whisper their fears to each other about the rise of another Gracchi. So he ran for administrator.
Okay, it's the island, the big island next to Rome.
But while he served, the island was beset by an unusually harsh winter. The rank and file suffered terribly, not having clothes or gear for such cold. So Gaius went to the people of the island and implored them to donate clothes to the soldiers.
Didn't know that it got that cold in Italy during the winter.
In this action, the senators saw a hint of the populist leanings of his brother. Perhaps it was paranoia, but it drove them to a plan. You see, Gaius served under a proconsul named Orestes. A proconsul was an ex-consul who had been assigned to be the governor of one of the Roman provinces and administer it for Rome. But there's a
Okay.
quirk in that system. Usually, proconsuls would be appointed for one-year terms, but not infrequently the term would get extended to allow the proconsul to finish dealing with a crisis, or to simply not shake up the local administration too much. Thing is, by Roman tradition, the proconsul's staff always stays on with him. So the Senate
It's really not that long. 1 year?
extended Orestes' term. If Orestes was in Sardinia, it would mean that his quaestor would have to stay in Sardinia. But the Gracchi were never much ones for tradition. With a resounding, "I see what you did there," Gaius took the first boat back to Rome. On his return, everybody was shocked. Not only the senators, but the people couldn't believe that he would abandon his post, that he would break with tradition. But when called before the censors, he defended himself and swayed the people against the unfairness of the Senate. And
Yeah. Again, killing Tiberius wasn't really part of the tradition, now was it? Better be careful what you do.
there was no law, only tradition to say that he must stay. He was let free. But the Senate wasn't done with him. A faction of the Senate now accused him of conspiring against Rome and encouraging the Italians to revolt. But here too, Gaius was able to clear his name, and the instant he became free, he began to plan his run for tribune, with a vengeance. The great and powerful all aligned against him, but so strong was the memory of his brother, and so volatile and explosive his rhetoric.
Yeah, it's not that long ago, and Tiberius was pretty well known by the people again. I'm curious to see what he's going to do when they get into power.
That vast waves of people poured into the city to support him. So many that there weren't houses enough in Rome to hold them, and the Campus
Damn.
Martius was too small to contain them. So people climbed atop the buildings surrounding the field to express their support for Gaius. But for all that, the campaigns of the elite were effective. He came not in first, but fourth in the voting. But as there were 10 men being elected to hold the tribunate, Gaius did indeed take up the mantle of tribune, and realized the Senate's worst fear. He immediately pressed the legacy of his brother, shaming the people for standing idle while a tribune was killed before them.
True. Yeah, I'm pretty shocked that the senators had such an easy time killing him. I think a lot of it might be because there was a lot of people in the area fighting, and in the confusion, people probably also ran and stuff. Yeah, they probably didn't see it.
At every chance, he elevated the memory of Tiberius and whipped up the people's sympathy and rage. Then, when he had the support, he pushed through a bill that legitimized Tiberius's unheard-of deposition of another tribune, and another one that made it a crime for any magistrate to banish a citizen without trial. But the key was he made these laws retroactive. They weren't there to protect against future offenses, but rather as a tool to get at one of his rivals. For after Tiberius had been slain, a man named Popilius Lena, who was a praetor at the time, had tried and banished or executed many of Tiberius's followers. Popilius didn't even wait for the trial. As soon as that law was passed, he fled Italy. Phase 1 of settling...
Damn. Yo. Nice going, guys. That's impressive. I like this guy.
Scores complete. Now, piece by piece, Gaius planned to dismantle the power of the Senate as he whipped the populace up into a frenzy. First, he appealed to the rural poor, bringing back his brother's agrarian reforms with an eye to breaking up the voting blocks that, under Roman law, came with having vast landed estates. Next, he appealed to the army, mandating the Republic pay for their clothes.
Ooh, yeah. He reminds me a lot about Tiberius with this. And it's kind of shocking that no one else in the Senate has kind of done it.
Some of their equipment, inadvertently laying the groundwork for the move from Rome's dependence on its citizen soldiers to the fully paid professional military, which would do the Republic. Third,
so that professional military wasn't there during the wars that we have seen. Wow. Kind of does make it a bit more impressive that the wars that Rome has won, that that was the system before. Hmm.
He began to float the idea of giving citizenship to those Italians that didn't live directly in Rome, an idea whose specter we'll see later. Fourth, he appealed to the middle class, the equestrians, by offering them a seat as judges in the courts of law.
Yeah, that's kind of true. Like I remember, was it the Syracusan? Was it the one with against Antiochus, or was the Third Macedonian War where kings and generals said that it was the Italian allies the Romans had with them? Where I'm like, Italian allies, aren't they Roman? So, huh.
A position which before had been reserved for senators. Finally, he appealed to the urban poor. A grain shortage had been going on, and the price of food was skyrocketing. So, he put a cap on the price of grain. The state would buy grain at its own expense and then sell it to the people at a loss to ensure that grain was readily available to those who needed it, laying the groundwork for the grain dole that will be such an important part of the imperial period. With great action and diligence, he applied himself to all of these projects, as well as to the construction of roads and granaries, and his efficacy reinforced his popularity.
Damn.
When it came time for the next elections, everybody expected him to run for consul. But instead, he supported a friend's bid and actually stepped out of politics, running for nothing that year.
Really?
But fate stepped in. For that year, so many people were running for tribune that the vote was so divided, not enough candidates got the minimum number of votes required by Roman law to fill all 10 slots. And by law, the remaining tribunes simply picked people to fill any vacant positions. And so, without even running for it, Gaius won himself the unthinkable second term as
Interesting. Okay. Did not expect that, but yeah, kind of earned it.
tribune. He had now achieved, by accident, what his brother had lost his life grasping for. Join us next time as we find out whether he can fulfill the legacy of his brother, or if he'll be thwarted at every turn.
I have a feeling this might not end that great. Yeah, I like him, but yeah. We saw what happened to Tiberius. I don't think the senators has learned that lesson. And I think they might have it to Gaius as well. Alright, thank you so much for watching, guys. That'll be in the link down in the description for the original video. If you guys want to check out some more history, or if you guys want to check out some mythology with all the sarcastic deduction, I'll have it up on screen. Otherwise, see you guys later. Bye.
Bare feet in the furrowed ground, dust on my tongue, heat bearing down, sun like a hammer on my back, name I was born with, they took that. But my chains float soft like water, running through this tired soul. You can bind my hands together, you can't cage what rivers know.